And now, Westwood One Entertainment proudly presents Casey's Top 40. Brought to you by 1-800-COLLECT, the way to save on collect calls. And by Little Caesars Pizza, where you always get 2 great pizzas for one low price.
Hello again, everybody, and welcome to Casey's Top 40. I'm David Perry, sitting in this week for Casey Kasem, and I'm all set to count down the 40 biggest hits on the pop chart. Our rankings come from the official survey of radio stations from coast to coast. The survey is conducted by Radio and Records, the industry's #1 newspaper. Well, we have 5 debuts this week, including brand new hits by Tom Petty, Soul Asylum, and Janet Jackson. Let the countdown begin.
Number 40.
The first of our 5 debuts is by a hot new band from England called Oasis. Last year, their CD, Definitely Maybe, became the fastest-selling debut album of all time in England. And this past fall, Oasis won the prestigious Brit Award for Best New Artist. This week, a song from their latest CD, What's the Story, Morning Glory, becomes the group's first hit in the USA. Here's Oasis and Wonderwall.
Casey's Top 40.
Well, now we're up to Oasis, a British group that's currently in the midst of a heated battle of the bands, a battle to determine the best rock band in England. The battle started last fall. That's when 2 of the most popular bands in England put out albums at the same time. Instantly, the British music press hyped the releases as the start of a big new rivalry, a fight for greatness equal to the 1960s battles between the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. On one side is Blur, a band whose hits in Britain include There's No Other Way and Boys and Girls. On the other side is Oasis, the band that won the Brit Award in 1995 for Best Newcomer. As fans rushed to buy the new albums by Blur and Oasis, British music publications started printing weekly updates on the rivalry. And just like the Beatles and Stones, there were good guys and bad guys. You see, Blur has a clean-cut image, and Oasis has a reputation for their hard, freewheeling lifestyle. Now, the battle's getting even more intense, because recently, both bands were nominated for 5 Brit Awards, awards to be given out February 19th. And they're going head-to-head in the categories of Best British Group and Best Album by a British Artist. This week, the Battle of the British Bands is in full swing on this side of the Atlantic, as the first top 40 hit in the USA for Oasis jumps 8 big notches to number 32 on Casey's Top 40. It's the song that's at number 1 this week on the alternative rock chart. Oasis and Wonderwall.
Counting down with Casey Kasem.
Rising 4 notches to number 28 on Casey's Top 40, here's Oasis, a band that recently played a surprise show at the famous Viper Room nightclub in Hollywood. When they first took the stage just after midnight, only a few dozen people were in the club. But as soon as word got out, over 1,000 people lined up outside hoping to get in.
Casey's Top 40.
I'm Casey Kasem, once a week on Casey's Top 40, and you know how your favorite songs are doing on the national pop chart. Well, now we're up to the first top 40 hit for Oasis, a hot British band that got together as a way to relieve boredom. Back in the late 80s, brothers Noel and Liam Gallagher were a couple of ordinary teenagers growing up in the suburbs of Manchester, England. They loved music and had thoughts of forming a band and becoming rock stars. But their greatest passion was heading over to the local arena on weekends to watch their hometown soccer team play. Noel and Liam led a simple lifestyle, but they say it got pretty boring after a while, especially when they had to figure out how to occupy their time after the soccer matches were over. For a while, Noel took a job as a roadie, but that left Liam at home without his brother, and soon the boredom got to him. So in 1991, Liam decided to create some excitement in his life by forming a band. He got together with 3 of his friends in Manchester, and then he got his brother Noel to quit his job as a roadie and join in. And together, the 5 young musicians began working to make their dreams of becoming rock stars into reality, working on the band they called Oasis. 3 years later, in 1994, those dreams were realized when their CD called Definitely Maybe became the fastest-selling debut album in British history. And last year, the group that started simply as a way to relieve boredom won the Brit Award for Best New Artist. This week, a song from that band's latest album climbs 2 notches to number 14 on Casey's Top 40.
Casey counts them down.
On Casey's Top 40, I'm David Perry for Casey Kasem. Now we're up to Oasis, a hot British band whose members are huge fans of the Beatles. In fact, the title of their first Top 40 hit comes from George Harrison's very first solo album. The 5 members of Oasis might possibly be the biggest Beatles fans in rock today. They often dress in paisley-colored shirts, just like the Beatles. Brothers Liam and Noel Gallagher have their hair cut in a mop-top style, just like the Beatles. And when it comes to writing songs, Noel says he likes to use references to the Beatles whenever possible. The group's first Top 40 hit is a title first used by the so-called Quiet Beatle, George Harrison. It's the title of an unreleased Technicolor fantasy film for which George wrote the music back in 1968, the film Wonderwall. In the film, a college professor named Oscar sees an image of a beautiful woman projected on his bedroom wall. He discovers that the image comes from a small hole in the wall, and as time goes on, Oscar makes more holes so he can see more projections and learn everything about the woman. The movie was never released, but the music was, because George Harrison put it out as his first solo album in 1969, an album called Wonderwall Music. Well, 27 years later, that title lives on. It's the title Beatles fan Noel Gallagher used for a song he wrote about his ex-girlfriend. This week, that song moves up 3 notches to number 9 on Casey's Top 40, Wonderwall by Oasis.
Casey's Top 40.
I'm Casey Kasem. These are the nation's biggest hits by the world's hottest stars. And holding steady at number 14, here are 5 hot stars from England. They're Oasis, a band that won big at the recent Brit Awards in England. Oasis picked up 3 trophies in all: Best Band, Best Album for their CD What's the Story Morning Glory, and Best Video for this song, Wonderwall.
Today, Casey's Top 40.
I'm Casey Kasem. Well, now we're up to Oasis, a British band whose leader says when he was growing up, he drowned his sorrows by listening to the Beatles song, I Am the Walrus. Noel Gallagher grew up in the industrial city of Manchester. He and his brothers Liam and Paul were raised by their mother. She supported the family by working on the production line at a local biscuit factory. Life was tough for the Gallagher boys, and more than once they got into a bit of trouble. Their only escape was music, particularly the Beatles music their mother always used to play. Noel says one song in particular was his favorite, a song John Lennon wrote filled with fantasy, the song I Am the Walrus. When he was sad and feeling trapped by his tough surroundings, Noel would play I Am the Walrus over and over, letting his mind absorb the music and the words. Noel says, quote, for 3.5 minutes I was immersed in the lyrical imagery of the Beatles. I'd think anything was possible. It was only when the record was finished and there was silence that I'd have to face the fact that I was still in Manchester. Unquote. Noel Gallagher still listens to I Am the Walrus to this day, and he also plays it with Oasis at many of their shows, accompanied by a string quartet. This is another song Oasis plays at their shows, a song that went all the way to number 1 on the alternative rock chart. It's a song that moves up from number 13 to number 9 this week on Casey's Top 40, Oasis and Champagne Supernova.
Casey's Top 40.
For Casey Kasem, I'm David Perry on Casey's Top 40. Now we're up to Oasis, a British band whose music is often compared to that of the Beatles. And no wonder. Their leader's mother used to clean the house listening to the Beatles. Brothers Noel and Liam Gallagher grew up in Manchester, England, a working-class city not unlike Liverpool, where the Beatles grew up. Their father was a construction worker who had a second job as a DJ at weddings and parties, and that's one reason they had a lot of music around their home. Another reason was their mother, who absolutely loved the Beatles. Noel and Liam say there was hardly a day when one Beatles record or another wasn't on the family turntable. You see, Mom found it helped her with the housework, kept her going, and lifted her spirits. The songs of the Beatles lifted the spirits of Noel and Liam, too. And even though they took a very different direction in their own music, they've used the Beatles for inspiration. Not just musical inspiration, but also inspiration to keep their standards high and live up to their highest potential. This week, one of the songs Oasis recorded with the Beatles in mind is survey song number 24 on Casey's Top 40. This is Oasis and Champagne Supernova.
Casey's Top 40.
I'm Casey Kasem, and we're counting down the 40 biggest hits in the 50 states. Dropping 2 notches to number 35 is Oasis, a British band that recently canceled an American tour right in the middle. At the time, they said they did it because of, quote, internal differences. But the band denied it was breaking up. This is Oasis with Don't Look Back in Anger.
Casey.